My name is Patrik from Technical University in Zvolen. I would like to present you in short about the forest damage with a focus on disturbances. I will start with a general description of forest damages. FAO, under the United Nations, described forest damage or forest disturbance as a damage caused by any factor, biotic or abiotic, that adversely affects the vigor and productivity of the forest, and is not a direct result of human activities. And this is the important part. It's not a direct result of human activities. Disturbances occur as discrete events contributing to a regime, which we can call as a historical series. Regimes can be alone, for example, fire regimes, or as a compounded regimes of two, or nested regimes in which subsets of compound values have a particular significance for the application. For example, fire, wind, and drought can be classified as subclasses of disturbance because they can occur even as a discrete events. For example, on ridges of mountains, we have problems with wind, or in the floodlands. But the question is, is it a war disturbance? Because our definition was it is not caused by the human. It should be not caused by human. But war is a specific event where on the some landscape clash two armies, and they are changing the environment there. So in this point of view, it is a human-caused disturbance. So this is an example of some disturbances. We took the examples from the Slovak Republic. We have a wind, snow, frost, bark beetles, and wood-destroying beetles, insects of assimilation organs and other insects, wood decay fungi, emissions, drought, and fire. In this project, we focus on the wind, drought, fire, and a war, which we have even case studies in the second half. Snow and frost are for us not so interesting because of the climate change and changing of climate. They are on retreat. Emissions, where the problem is in the 70s, 80s, but in the last decades were signed and agreed some environmental agreements for the mitigation of using of chemicals in plants and so on. So even with the new age of green technologies, they are not as problematic as in the past. About fungi, it is more like a secondary driver because we can't measure it in the forests very easy, or the disturbance is not so visible. So we count it as a secondary driver, not interesting for us. And about bark beetles and other insects, they are secondary driver because they are the result of weakened forest. So the forest must be weakened somehow by primary drivers, wind or drought. So now I would like to talk a little in close about the four primary drivers. The fire, it is an event. It has a definite beginning and definite end. It can last for minutes, hours, days, months, even years. This definition seems out of this content, but FAO defined fire hazard as a measure of that part of the fire damage contributed by the fuels available for burning. Fire, to start the fire, we need the three essential elements: the oxygen, fuel, and heat source. They are often displayed as a fire triangle, but wildfires are a little bit more problematic. They are something like an ecosystem process which needs four elements: fuel structure, ignition source, and primary productivity and seasonality. And now comes into the question the fire hazard mentioned earlier, the seasonality, because in the last years the new technologies in fire suppression leads to the accumulation of fuel, so not directly contributing to fire hazard. And fire, of course, is highly sensitive to climate change, specifically to temperature changes. So the climate change is now extending the seasonality for fire, so contributing to more abundance of fire structure as an ignition source. The opening of the canopy, this is a forest review, can lead to a forestful drying earlier in the season and could create novel habitats that are hotter, drier, and windier. It could lead to an extension of fire season. Next disturbance, we have a wind. Wind is really affected by a local topography because it affects its speed and direction, and therefore influences the wind load on trees. By some studies in forestry, the riskiest cutting is shelterwood cut, followed by even age silviculture, characterized by its repeated low thinning. Cuttings where the probability of wind throw is lowest are selective high thinning of uneven size stands and dimension cutting. So a very dense unthinned stands have a very low probability of wind damage. This sounds interesting because in conclusion, thinning increases the damage probability temporarily. We are opening the forest and there is a probability the wind can get in and destroy the forest. But on the other hand, if we don't manage the forest, the probability is higher that the disturbance occur on a larger area. But and this is the most interesting information found, that if we left 75% of naturally disturbed area of forest without logging, we can maintain 90% richness of its unique species. Whereas if we decide to retain only 50%, we can maintain at least around 75% of its unique species richness. So this is a very interesting point of view for biodiversity. Drought. This is a very specific disturbance. It will probably occur more frequently in the future. Drought is described by the Meteorological Organization as conditions that are significantly drier than normal or otherwise limiting moisture availability to a potentially damaging extent. Authors, Ellen et al., presented a set of global vulnerability drivers that are known with high confidence. It's 6 points that the droughts eventually will occur everywhere. The warming will produce more severe droughts. Atmospheric moisture demand will increase non-linearly. Mortality can occur faster in hotter droughts. Mortality happens rapidly relative to growth intervals needed for forest recovery. But the most interesting is the point 5, that the shorter droughts will occur more frequently than longer droughts and can become lethal under warming. So the frequency of lethal droughts will increase non-linearly. This is really connected with climate change. And we can expect in the Central European region that probably our plant species will not be resistant to this change, and we will have to think about introduction of more resistant species, for example, for Mediterranean region. And war. This will sound cynical, but the books described war as an outdoor activity. Because in order to conquer the land, the soldiers have to cover physical space. So consequently, every war has a distinct spatiality depending on the terrain, climate of the area, and the type of warfare conducted. These battlefields are not artificially created sites, but they are the sites of transformation. They are the sites where the peaceful landscape is gradually, by the extending the war, gradually turned into an environment of war. And what is this environment of war? It is a space where the soldiers engage in combat in order to conquest the territory. And during this conquest, it is only possible to accomplish through the active engagement with the environment. But this disturbance don't have a definite ending as a fire or wind, because what is the post-war situation? For example, United States or the countries of the former Soviet Union until this day continue to learn about the vast quantities of chemicals, depleted uranium and other residues of their respective military systems that litter battlefields around the world. So the cost to remediate these sites will probably reach billions, and it is the legacy from 19th and 20th century which is extending far into the 21st century. And the most interesting question is, can climate change somehow affect the war as a disturbance? So there is an example for Sudan in the Darfur, where the climate change and desertification exacerbated fighting between the pastoralists and farmers and forced millions of people to flee their homes and villages. So we can probably expect in the future that in some regions in the world, this disturbance will be something which can normally occur. And that's, in short, everything for me. Thank you very much.